Check out carmarshal.com. The link is in the description. They help support us.
A single cop sued 23 times for rights violations, costing taxpayers dearly, still on the job. One police officer has been accused in numerous lawsuits of illegal home searches, false arrests, and theft, and instead of firing him, the department has spent more than $280,000 covering up his misconduct. By Rachel Blevins, March 20, 2018. New York. It is no secret that police officers can commit several crimes in multiple departments and never face criminal charges. But it is not often that a single officer is named as the defendant in 23 lawsuits, costing the city more than $280,000, and he is still on the job. David Grieco is that officer, and in the 12 years he has spent as a detective for the 75th Precinct of the New York Police Department, he has earned the nickname Bullethead, stemming from his reputation as a hot-headed officer who breaks into houses without a warrant, makes false arrests, and has been accused of theft on multiple occasions. In 2013, Grieco was the subject of at least 5 Internal Affairs Bureau investigations after he was accused of using his badge to conduct illegal apartment searches and the theft of jewelry and thousands of dollars in cash. At the time, Reginald Sykes told the New York Daily News that Grieco led the charge when a team of officers broke into his apartment without a warrant. They manipulated evidence to make it look as though the drugs they found in a back room were in plain sight from the front window in an attempt to justify the raid, and Grieco told 2 of the men that if they produced a gun by midnight, he would make the drug charges disappear. "These cops are corrupt. They should be off the streets," Sykes said. "They use illegal methods to make arrests. Who's to say they wouldn't do that to a completely innocent person?" In another case, Grieco led an early morning raid at a home without a warrant in 2017, and homeowner Luis Vargas, 54, claimed that Grieco immediately began yelling, "Where's the guns? Where's the drugs?" The officers, who were all dressed in plain clothes, began tearing up the apartment, and they didn't stop until they found 2 bottles of sedatives belonging to Lillian Vargas, 53. They refused to listen to her when she claimed she had a prescription for the medication, and instead, they arrested her and forced her out into the cold weather in her robe. Both Luis and Lillian Vargas were charged with drug possession, and Lillian was sent to Rikers Island until her family was able to come up with the money to bail her out. However, when the pair appeared in court, their charges were mysteriously dropped. They filed a lawsuit against Grieco and the officers who accompanied him because while their charges were dropped, they never received compensation from the department for the damage that was done to their home, and the officers were never disciplined for entering the residence without a warrant. There were at least 9 complaints filed against Grieco up to 2013 alleging that he broke into homes without a warrant, and the worst punishment he faced in each incident was losing up to 10 days of vacation time. In addition to letting him keep his job, the NYPD also covered for Grieco in many cases and refused to release information about his conduct. In 2018, it is clear that the only thing losing vacation time has taught Grieco is that he has the ability to work the system over and over and over again. In fact, he earned more than $190,000 in 2017, and $73,000 of it was from overtime, according to a report from the New York Daily News. The additional time on the streets has come at a hefty price, and Grieco has now been named as a defendant in 23 lawsuits that have cost New York taxpayers more than $280,000 in settlements. In 19 of those cases, all of the criminal charges were dropped against the individuals Grieco arrested.
Officers are caught in a lie, it not only shakes the community's trust, it also undermines the workings of the criminal justice system itself. That's because it's hard for defendants to find out who's a bad cop and who's not. As WNYC's Robert Lewis reports, the secrecy calls into question the very notion of a fair trial.
Come to order. Court is back in session. As a reminder,
Night court in Brooklyn. A few dozen defendants are waiting to see the judge. They come into the courtroom one by one from holding cells in back.
766, the defendant's charged with criminal sale of controlled substance in the third.
Even in this day and age, when police are under so much scrutiny, a cop's word carries a lot of weight. Prosecutors rely on it from the very beginning of a case, when they first ask a judge to set bail.
The detective lifted up the mattress and observed the gun. The 4 defendants were placed under arrest for the firearm.
But you rarely hear much in court about a cop's history of misconduct. That's because, unlike other public employees, police personnel records are confidential, and the culture of the courthouse makes them nearly impossible to get. Nearly, but not completely. In 5 months of reporting, WNYC identified more than 120 officers with documented credibility issues sometime in the last 10 years. Most stayed on the force, and many kept making arrests despite their problems telling the truth. Jonathan Abel studied access to police disciplinary records across the country as a fellow at the Stanford Constitutional Law Center.
People go to jail and are sentenced to death because an officer has lied on the stand. And officers' testimony can be very hard to push back against, even when it's false, because officers generally are respected in society.
Bronx detective Matthew McCrossan seems pretty respectable. In 2 decades on the force, he's handled arson cases, tracked down fugitives, and investigated murders. McCrossan also ran into some trouble along the way, a few incidents that might reasonably come up at trial. In 2000, the Civilian Complaint Review Board said he exaggerated his testimony about an arrest. In 2005, a federal judge tossed out the evidence in a gun possession case because she didn't believe McCrossan and other officers. The defendant walked. But criminal defense attorney Anthony Ventura didn't know any of that when he cross-examined the detective in a 2009 murder case.
If I had known, I would have brought it out on his cross for the judge's consideration in evaluating McCrossan's credibility.
Ventura's client spent 3 years on Rikers Island. Then he was acquitted. He sued the city. He said detectives withheld evidence of his alibi, and the city paid him $155,000 to settle. The NYPD wouldn't let McCrossan talk, and city lawyers wouldn't comment. Of course, it's possible those prior incidents wouldn't have made any difference. One judge's incredible cop is another judge's model lawman.
He has a reputation that precedes him as a very good detective.
Michael Palladino is president of McCrossan's union, the Detectives Endowment Association.
I wouldn't necessarily say just because a judge came out with a subjective decision that an officer's testimony was not credible doesn't necessarily indicate the officer was lying.
But defendants have a constitutional right to any evidence that could help prove their innocence, and prosecutors are required to disclose it if they know about it. In February, a Manhattan judge threw out a drug conviction after prosecutors failed to disclose an officer's history of lawsuits alleging false arrest. Daniel Alonzo is a former number 2 in the Manhattan DA's office. He says good DA's offices should keep tabs on officers with credibility problems, and good prosecutors should turn the information over.
Certainly the defense lawyer ought to be able to ask, just test the witness, did you lie in that case? And that's something which, if the prosecutor knows about it and the defense doesn't, then the prosecutor needs to set up systems to be able to have access to that information and provide it.
Some prosecutors around the country keep lists of problem cops. That's what they do in Phoenix, where Jerry Cobb is spokesman for the Maricopa County Attorney's Office.
You have to disclose exculpatory evidence. There's no gray area there. I think agencies that are not taking the extra step to ensure that they are meeting that obligation are imperiling their cases by having something like that come up down the road.
WNYC asked all 5 New York City district attorneys' offices if they keep such lists. All either said no or refused to respond. Bennett Gershman, a law professor at Pace University, says the average local prosecutor acts like an ostrich.
He's burying his head in the sand. He's not looking for something that might be right in front of him, might be very easy to locate. Yes, this may very well be willful blindness on the part of the prosecution because they want to be able to prosecute their cases effectively.
If prosecutors do know about an officer's history, they don't have to turn it over right away. They can wait all the way up until the officer is about to testify. That's too late for most defendants. Many take a plea deal on the promise of a shorter sentence without ever knowing their chance of challenging their accuser's testimony. And defense attorneys can't get discipline records directly from the NYPD because state law makes those records confidential. That's why one local organization is trying a new approach.
I'm Julie Ciccolini, and I work at the Legal Aid Society.
They represent 230,000 people a year, the biggest public defender in the city. Ciccolini is a paralegal. She's working on something called the Cop Accountability Project. It's basically a database of dirt on individual cops. She's checking for lawsuits against an officer testifying in an upcoming case, and she finds one.
This was a false robbery arrest. And then see if it settled. It did for $90,000.
There's not much detail. Most lawsuits settle early and don't leave a long paper trail. But even basic information can help.
And then gonna tag this, and for the rest of his cases, it'll be updated that he has these 2 lawsuits, the rest of his legal aid cases.
So he just made it into the database?
He did.
One night in June, attorney Renata Lund took the database for a test run during arraignments in Brooklyn. Early in her shift, she got a gun possession case. The officer, listed on the complaint, is a guy named David Grieco at the 75th Precinct in East New York.
David Grieco, I swear that name's familiar.
It turns out he's had some issues. Grieco wasn't in the courtroom, but Lund made sure his record was.
That the people can ask for bail on the word of this man with a straight face is absolutely outrageous. David Grieco has been sued 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, at least 9 times. He's under investigation by IAB.
That's the NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau.
He's been under investigation by IAB for the past year for stealing property during search warrant executions and for lying during search warrants.
The judge set bail at $7,500, same as he did in several other cases that night. Lund was disappointed. Grieco didn't respond to an interview request. But there's evidence the database is having a broader impact. The NYPD is starting to do the same thing. Larry Byrne is the Deputy Commissioner for Legal Matters.
Basically, we're trying to do with accurate, complete information what the Legal Aid Society is trying to do with their misnamed so-called bad cop database.
There's no timetable for when that system will be up and running. For WNYC, I'm Robert Lewis.
This is the second in a 3-part series examining police credibility and accountability. Tomorrow, New York has one of the most restrictive laws in the nation about police disciplinary records. We'll tell you about it and how they do it in the other 49 states.
County, this is Charlotte County Cop Watch, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I have just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheep up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Sheriff County Cop Watch with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me, and I'm sick of it. So I'm trying to wake people up. But my wife would love it if if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers. Just think if each one of you subscribers just gave let's say actually yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where, at least I can do it, 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt-free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it, and each of you gave $1, and that was every month, oh my God, yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea, too, that we have is, you know, if I got, you know, some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. You know, 47,000 of you so far right now, you know, $1 a day, I mean, $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head, help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.